You come across the people that always make these claims that they're not racist and they weren't raised like that. And one thing they have in common is they repeat the same exact words. This is how you know. That's how it's evident that they have grown up in a very racist home. And then they rehearse these things. Oh, well, if a black person say this to you, then you say this to them. And if the black person say this, then say this. You can tell because too many of them repeat the same thing word for word. They teach it. This is all taught in the household. When you're accused of a racist, this is what you say. This is what you say. You know, you talk to one, you done talk to them all. I have not come across one that have one single profound thing to say. It's like listening to a robot, and it's boring and uninteresting. But let's get into this article. Not racist be like the top 10 phrases used by people who claim they are not racist. This is not about racist. This is about not racist. You've seen them before. The special class of white people who say racist shit and do racist things, but declare themselves the least racist person you know. Yeah, right. Like I said, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear the same words over and over, that's because it's taught. This is part of what they learn in the household. Their racism isn't always intentional. Sometimes it's a byproduct of privilege. Sometimes it is a deflection. And sometimes it's caused by the vapid, shallow inability to care about or understand anything that they don't agree with because they are the majority. But that doesn't make it right. Okay, even a crowd can be wrong. And if you want to see a crowd that's wrong, just look at the lynching pictures. Crowds can be wrong. Or look at the police shootings, unarmed people. Crowds can be wrong. The population of not racists is steadily growing. And they're steadily full of shit, too. Not racists voted for Donald Trump. Not racists say that kneeling for the flag means you want to slit the throats of veterans. Not racists believe in blue lives, white Jesus, and black on black crime. They sure as hell do. So we decided to do a countdown of the 10 most popular phrases so that you can easily identify not racist or play a game of not racist bingo in your spare time. I would prefer not to come across these people at all. If that's on the list, I can go with that. Let's go with number 10. Why must everything have to be about race? Now, I find this one the most laughable one. Your people started racism centuries ago and made everything through chattel slavery about race, everything through the Reconstruction about race, everything through Jim Crow about race, everything through civil rights about race, and even present day with all these unarmed black people getting shot, and you always agree with the cop. How can you make everything about race? It's kind of idiotic. Honey, that playbook was written centuries ago. There's no point in you trying to hold it up in the faces of black people now. One of the most used ideas in the Not Racist handbook is that talking about race creates decisiveness. No, that decisiveness began centuries ago and have been passed down. That's where that decisiveness come from. It don't come from talking about race. Shit, if that's the case, let me talk about a mansion. Maybe that will cause me to be in one. Yeah, right. The theory rests on the premise that the more people point out racism, the more I really don't know how the second part works because it's a bullshit phrase. Okay, it's no need to learn how it works. It's a bullshit, and the person that's saying it know they're full of shit too. The truth is that talking about race make white people uncomfortable because it reminds them of the filthy history of white supremacy. That's why Texas school books referred to slaves as immigrants. That's very strange. We don't get treated like immigrants, do we? Nah. And Confederate flag wavers have twisted the bloodiest conflict in US history into something about states' rights. And state rights sucks, by the way. Jim Crow came out of states' rights, ladies and gentlemen. So when they bring that up, I almost laugh in their face. Tradition, whatever the hell that is, and the North's hatred of sweet tea. That's not true. I know quite a few people that like sweet tea. And declaring human beings to be personal property. Well, you wrote slave codes and black codes and pig laws that spoke about black people being property. So, uh, it's a little kind of hard to be arguing that point when that happened centuries ago. Okay. And I get it. It is very uncomfortable for white people to hear about the atrocities of racism and knowing that their people are complicit in centuries of mistreatment. Believe me, they ain't that damn upset about it. It would give me the heebie jeebies too. But it's like cheating on a woman, confessing, and then wondering why she's always bringing up old shit when you come home late. But the only way America will ever cure the cancer of white supremacy is by talking about it and treating it as if it were a disease. But if you find a tumor in your left lung and your doctor brought it up every time you lit a cigarette, it would be a stupid response with, why does everything have to be about lung cancer? It's killing you, man. It's killing you. Oh, man. 9. This one I hate with a passion beyond my bones, but here's 9. I dated a black guy girl. Do you know slave masters slept with slaves? It doesn't mean that they weren't racist. My grandmother told me down there in Ben Hill County, Georgia, where she grew up, you couldn't turn a corner without seeing a biracial child walking around down there. That's how many that's how many babies your white men had with black women. But I digress. Let's get on this one because this one I hate with a passion. A few days ago, I received a message from a non-racist woman who genuinely wanted to know why I used the phrase white people. Well, see, back in 1870, that's what you start referring to yourselves as. That has nothing to do with black people, so why would she bring that up to a black man? Just saying. I patiently replied to her. I don't always clap back, but when I do, it's in a mailbag. And she wrote back that she understood. She explained that she wasn't racist because her ex-husband was black. How many times have we seen in the media where an interracial couple break up and racism all of a sudden gets involved in it? Oh boy. And she had half black children, which left me wondering, who are these black men and women dating these clueless white people and leaving them as unwoke as they found them? You gonna let her raise your kids, huh? For real? Who told white people that when a black penis enters a white vagina, or vice versa, the orgasm gives them a special immunity to being a bigot? If so, where does it go? The racism, not the penis, is stupid. Instead of the March on Washington or the Montgomery bus boycott, should we have just marched around the country having orgies? That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Okay, interracial relationship sometimes has nothing to do with love. Sometimes it's about sex and sex only. Number two, all biracial children in the history of this country did not come out of a relationship. A lot of them came out of rape. Okay, the woman was not always willing and participating in the act. Wow. Mm-mm-mm. Moving on to 8. I don't see color. Well, then your ass must be Stevie Wonder. Because when I wake up every day, I see color. I see male and female and many other obvious things. So for you not to see it, then your ass must be as blind as Stevie Wonder. And how do you get through the traffic lights if you don't see color? And how do you know whether it's day or night if you don't see color? Okay, I mean, I'm just asking. Do you stop at green lights? Exactly. How do you play checkers then? Not racists will actually try to convince you that they don't care about race and that erasing the concept of race from our minds is a self righteous, egalitarian attribute. Bullshit. Yeah, it is. It really is a bullshit statement. And you know, when people say that to me, and this is just my own commentary, I believe they are even more racist. So what you're saying is you got to block out who and what I am in order to accept me. What's wrong with seeing a black woman and just accepting me at face value? What's wrong with that? Why do you have to block out my race and anything else about me that's obviously part of me in order to accept me? That never made any sense. Here is the thing. The idea of a post-racial society is really the desire for a white society. Even non-racist Caucasians don't mind this because they don't understand that whiteness has surpassed the classification of a racial category in America and has become a default. Black people want to be treated like everyone else. We don't desire to be seen as everyone else. Most African Americans, Mexicans, Jews, etc., love their race and their culture. It is a large part of who they are. We don't care that you don't see color. We just want you to respect it. Also, how do you play Uno? You know, when my family moved to New Jersey from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I was 9 going on 10. And when we moved in next door, we were the only Black family on the street at the time. You know that was like pure hell. And everybody else on the street was white. There were a couple of swirling couples, with children, but not that many, probably like one or two. Anyway, I will never forget how the neighbor came over to meet us. She came over, and this is what came out of her mouth. She was like, "Oh, I'm so and so next door. I just want you to know I don't have nothing against Black people. I can't stand that. Why can't you just walk up and say, 'Hello, my name is so and so. What is your name?' And leave it at that. Why do you have to come up and give Black people a sermon on not having nothing against Black people? That tells me you really do have something against it." So from that point on, I just stayed clear of her. I just couldn't warm up to her. You know, you make a big mistake when you walk up to people like that. Just introduce yourself and keep it moving. Don't add all that stuff in there. To me, you just make it worse when you do that. 7, you're the racist. Oh yeah, we get this a lot, especially on YouTube, y'all. You YouTubers, you know what I mean. In September 2013, Global Quarterly, not racist, the executive board decided to introduce a clever bit of trickery into the racial discussion in America. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to think about this. They didn't start calling Black people the racist until 2013. See, this is why I'm telling you, this is all taught collectively among them. All right, so let's move on. According to the memo obtained by the Root, Caucasians were instructed to respond to any claims of racism, no matter how subtle, with the charge that Black people were the racist ones. Again, think back, ladies and gentlemen, this didn't start until 2013, which means it goes back to what I said before. They all teach this among each other. This is why I don't care what white face you see in front of you, these words come right out of their mouth. All taught, instructed. Since then, according to a poll never conducted by Pew Research, claims of reverse racism have risen more than 389%. I would like to know where it's been rising. I'm just asking, where has it been rising? I'm not one of those people who believe Black people can't be racist. Again, that's all in the memo, ladies and gentlemen, because I too felt racism creeping into my heart once when a Caucasian coworker offered me leftover potato salad. Even then, black on white racism technically exists. It is barely injurious because feeling butthurt is not a medical symptom. So now you know where you, the racist, came from. Okay, it came out in 2013 and they've been saying it ever since. Here's another one. I grew up around black people. There are people who grew up in the inner city or played Pop Warner football on the Negro side of the town who believe that they can't be racist. According to them, growing up around black people, along with mandingo penis and black vagina, completes the holy trinity of racism cure. When asked why the white boys raised on slave plantations, the millennials who went to integrate schools but carry tiki torches in Charlottesville, Virginia, and Darren Wilson, who worked his entire career as a police officer in a majority black town before he shot Mike Brown Jr., still had remnants of racism in their bloodstream. White people collectively paused, gazed at their flip flops for a few brief seconds, and replied, "Why does everything have to be about race?" Not all white people. I don't say this, but I know some YouTubers do. I don't. Because number one, if the ones that claim they are not racist are not stopping the ones among them that are, then what good are you to the black community? So please stop. Don't waste my time. I don't care if this comes out of your mouth. It means absolutely nothing. Not all white people. Nothing upsets hashtag not racist stomach more than hearing the phrase white people used in any capacity. Only the term white privilege causes more consternation. That same woman who wrote the letter I mentioned earlier said this. First and foremost, many of us white people could care less what racial label you bestow upon us because at the end of the day, the same loving God, oh boy, that created white skin created dark skin. Oh, actually, that's not true. Not true. But let's get back into the letter. Why does there have to be a label? That was actually created centuries ago. Okay, I don't know why that question would be posed to black people when none of these labels came from us. Why must we classify as color? Well, maybe because it's on all applications. It's in your doctor's office when you're, going to your doctor and filling out the application for the first time. And whenever we are filling anything out for the government, they ask you, you know, your race or how you classify yourself. And these things didn't come from black people. Okay. So you need to get in front of your people, other white people, and ask these questions, not to black people. When we are all God's masterpiece, no, that's not true. But let's move on. No one runs from what the classification of one's skin color reminds them of. Okay, I am convinced y'all really truly do not have high IQs. This is very convincing that you really don't have them. What happened years ago is embarrassing. Yeah, but what have you done to change what happened years ago? Nothing. I can walk into any place to fill out a job application, and you best believe it's going to have something about my race for me to check off somewhere on that application. It's hurtful and morally disturbing. I am fortunate my family did not participate in barbaric behaviors as other white people. I don't believe you. Let's move on. Don't believe you. And God help our souls had we ever consider using racial slurs at another person. Don't believe you. No, my family was not and is not perfect, but sir, not all of us were mentally disturbed. And that is what someone has to be in order to hold another against their will in captivity. But according to the US Census, a lot of y'all had slaves. That 1% that y'all run around saying all the time is actually false. You know, if you didn't want anybody to know that white people had slaves, a lot of you had them, then why did you keep record of it in the US Census if you didn't want anybody to know? So it's just kind of laughable that many of you try to pull that 1% stuff. And the US Census from centuries ago exists where people can go through it and easily debunk what you're saying. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. And sir, why would you want to write such things that fuel that hatred? Why would you assume that all whites fit into a general spectrum? Well, when we see such a large participation in racism over the century, it's hard not to see it that way. And my question is, what have you good white people done to change all of that? Nothing. So let's move on. If this is so, does this mean that because you are black, sir, that you are a gangbanger? Do you see the issue here? No, no, I don't. Being a white person and being a gangbanger, I don't even understand why you're making that kind of comparison. You looking at black people and stereotyping them is just a product, it's just a byproduct of your racism. But comparing whiteness to a black person being a gangbanger, I just don't see it. I don't see the comparison. Okay. If that's the case, then I should look at all white people like all of you come from former slave owners. Would that be a fair thing for me to do? I mean, no, and actually I can debunk everything that's in this fakeified white paragraph. It's really stupid as hell. Do you see the issue here, sir? No, and you shouldn't even see no issue in you making a comparison as a white person to a black man being a gangbanger. If you see that comparison, then without a shadow of a doubt, you don't have a high IQ. Okay. Although this is one of the most interesting uses of the not all white people variation, it raises an interesting point. I have a friend who is black and owns A Tesla, when she hears a mechanic advise people to change their oil every 3,000 miles, she doesn't say, not all cars. My friend is intelligent enough to know that the mechanic is referring to most cars or the typical car. Nothing in this world is 100%. Somewhere there exists a cat who likes having mice around, but for the most part, people who object to the word combination white people do so only because they aren't used to being stereotyped. That's very true. When the letter writer considered every Black stereotype and decided to ask if I was a gangbanger, it did not bother me. Know why? Because I'm not a gangbanger. I am also accustomed to living with the knowledge that my skin engenders certain thoughts about who I am. She does not have to navigate a world with prepurposes her psyche on a day-to-day basis. And that, dear reader, is called white privilege. Exactly. Exactly. Go back to Africa. Go back to Africa. You know what, white people, if we went back to Africa, all of us, every Black person in this country, do you know you wouldn't have an America? America would collapse before the next day comes. First of all, I know you coined that phrase, and I know it comes from centuries ago. And here's the thing, not any part of American history have you shown that you can live without slavery, mass incarceration, cheap labor, or subjugating a group and using them to your advantage. You haven't shown not one century where you completely stood without Black people in this country to do the work or to be subjugated by you. So, no, you wouldn't survive if Black people went back to Africa and cut your ass off. You wouldn't make it. And if you believe you could, then you should have shipped Black people out of here right after slavery. Why didn't you just get all of us out of here if you could do everything yourself? You just don't want to admit your country would have collapsed. And evidence of that is written into history. Go back and look at what happened after the slaves left the plantations. Go read it. It said the South collapsed economically. Many plantation owners were foreclosed on, couldn't pay their bills. So then you had to mastermind a way to get the Black man back into free labor. So you mastermind the prison. The prison is a byproduct of slavery, just like your slave catcher is a byproduct of slavery. Pick up a book. It really is not hard. White privilege is believing that you have the right to tell anyone to leave the country they built with their own hands for free. White privilege is believing that America is in decline and can be made great only by a billionaire trust fund baby, but simultaneously saying that Black football players have no right to criticize America because it made them rich. This logic is so stupid. White privilege is the belief that this country is yours, and anyone who doesn't like it should kick rocks. White privilege is the belief that kneeling is cause for being anti-American, but not the actual unconstitutional mistreatments of Americans. Well, first of all, white people, you have no right to order anyone out of this country, especially the descendants of the ones that built the country. You could not have built America. Let's face it, we see your sunburned skin and your pussballs, and that's with sunscreen on the shelf. So if you had to work from sun up to sundown, you would have all been dead. Plus, it's already written in history that during slavery, during chattel slavery, white people didn't work. So for you to make the claim that you built this country during a time when you didn't even work is just downright laughable. So you can say that until you turn blue and drop dead. And I promise you, not one black person is going to pack their bag up and leave America because you said that to them. I promise you, it's never going to happen. If anybody got the right to be here, it is the descendants of the slaves that did the actual hard labor, not the ones that sat around and did nothing for centuries or come into the slave field just to bark some orders out that nobody gave a shit about. Okay, go back to Africa. It's just never going to happen. But if you feel like it's some form of entertainment for you to say it, then go right ahead and say it. It's not going to do you any good. I promise you, not one black person is running home to pack their bag. Not one. And it just go to show you, these people can't come up with nothing new. Do you know they were saying go back to Africa to black people during chattel slavery? That just go to show you these people have not evolved or grown one iota over the centuries. They were out in the field saying that shit to slaves. That's how long they've been saying that, for centuries. Woo! Keep showing those high IQs, okay? That's why I'm proposing that whenever we hear anyone complaining about big government, high taxes, Black Lives Matter, traffic, not enough pineapples on their pizza, or ask whether something is gluten free, Black people should cup their hands around their mouths and bellow out, go back to Caucasia. Yeah, you know where Mount Seir is, right? Because y'all came out of them caves right up there in Mount Seir. Okay, why must you always be the victim? I think y'all just jealous because you can't be the victim. Like, why would you say something like that to somebody? Why must you always, oh my God. Another not racist premise posted that when Black people play the race card, they are blaming the failures of Black people on racism. Hmm. I remember reading about white mobs burning down 68 Black towns in America. Yeah, you're not a victim. According to them, they want to make white people the villains and ourselves the victims. So when we saw them Black men, mainly Black business owners, hanging in the tree, and the white mobs that lied to get that black man hung. He was not a victim. Got it. They're partially correct. Black people kill too many other black people. Yes, and that's one thing. Black people don't deny it. White people try to act like you don't commit crimes, but when we go to the FBI table, 84% of you kill other white people. Just saying. The black family structure is falling apart. Well, the black family fell apart centuries ago because they were separated during chattel slavery. And the separation continued when you were incarcerating black men that had families. And even today, your cop will go up to a black man and that's not doing anything and scream resisting arrest, and next thing you know, he's off in prison. Separating families by mass incarcerating black people. Yeah, yeah, I would say you had something to do with that, but let's move on. Should focus more on education. Actually, black people do focus on education. Why don't you see the amount of black women that are graduating from college? That should pretty much clear up that point. Those things will help black people immensely. Actually, no, it doesn't. There have been black men that were highly educated, and some from the hood that may not have that much education. But in America, because of racism, those two men are virtually treated the same. LeBron James' house was vandalized and they wrote nigger on there. And he's not a thug, okay? He wasn't a thug. So no, it shows you. Look at Oprah. Oprah tried to go shopping, and it was a store with white employees, and they wouldn't let her in. Oprah's a billionaire. So no, you're wrong about that. But if black people did all those things and ignored the fact that a black college graduate is more likely than a white high school grad to be unemployed and on average earns less than one, or the school with majority black students receive less funds than white schools with the same tax and income basis, or ignored mass incarceration, sentence inequality. Okay, didn't we see people get bigger sentences on crack cocaine than whites that got caught with cocaine, powder cocaine? Just saying. Drug on war, which we know was really drugs on war on black people. The history of redlining, that's right, that was done by the banks. Banks giving blacks higher interest rates, disproportionate police brutality. That would be stupid. It's like asking someone who's sexually abused to never talk about it or even to keep quiet when cops ask about it, because it turns a survivor into a victim. We are the victims of racism. Hmm. Wow. It's hard to believe with high IQs, you just don't get that. I'm starting to think that the high IQs are really the dumbest people in our society. Oh, wait, they are. I don't want to sound racist, but I have been told on numerous occasions to never consider anything after but. The oldest sleigh of hand in the book of racism magic is to proclaim oneself not racist. It's a wondrous trick that never works. That's so true. It's akin to R. Kelly opening up a daycare center and using the motto, I'm not a pedophile, but I'd love to babysit your kids. Also, whenever anyone says, I don't want to sound racist, brace yourself because they are definitely about to say some racist shit. Number one, make America great again. I can't even. All I can say is greatness is in the eye of the beholder. Tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, please do. Donate to this not racist person. Peace.